This morning in North Carolina, wheels are spinning. Determination is winning. A passion is now a thriving business, and it shows no signs of slowing down. How? The power of a conversation, like the one Clint Spiegel had with First Horizon Bank about starting a bike wheel manufacturing facility in Asheville. Now it's not just talk, it's rubber meets road. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Clint. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.
Don't miss the 10 for $10 produce sale this week at Safeway. Get select produce like large Hass avocados, mangoes, cucumbers, large lemons, green, red, or yellow bell peppers, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby peeled carrots for only $1 each. Also this week at Safeway, select meats or buy one, get one free. Get items like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef or 16-ounce containers of Jenny O 93% lean ground turkey, burger patties or Italian style or taco style ground turkey. Buy one, get one free. Visit Safeway.com for more great deals.
Today on the Marketing Mad Men, we're continuing our conversation on agencies. What are they doing to change with the times, and what are they doing to better serve their clients? Again, this is a chance for them to defend themselves because we kind of bash them all the time. We have Brent Barbee with Conquer Agency, and he's here to talk through all the different things that are coming up and all the different things he's seen that have caused that change. Today on the Marketing Mad Men.
They say marketing is a madman's game. So now we turned it over to the Marketing Madman with Nick Constantino and Trip Job.
Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job here with co-host Nick Constantino of 680 The Fan and the Atlanta Braves Radio Network. You know, we did our first marketing agency episode last week, and, I guess we can't get enough.
That's got to be the case, man. I couldn't think of it any other way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things and the reason we want to keep working on this is a lot of people go, what does an agency do? How do I work with them? So I think it's wonderful that today we've got with us Brent Barbee, president of the Conquer Agency. And Brent, welcome to the Marketing Madmen.
Good to be here. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. Just to follow what Tripp said, it's the show is always about just the new trends in marketing, how to use agencies, and I think it's a commonly misunderstood thing. And I think one of the problems is, there's too many kinds of agencies these days. You got digital agencies, analytics agencies, media agencies, creative agencies, and they're siloed. And all of a sudden now, a company who used to maybe work with one or two partners is finding themselves having to work with 8. And then who's the liaison between those 8? So as we deal with more, full funnel activity agencies that kind of handle all of it, what's the difference? Where is the advantage there? So I think those are some of the things we're going to talk about. Before we get into it, if you could, why don't you give some background on your experience in the industry, what led you to start Conquer and be involved with Conquer, and then some of the things and clients that you handle now.
Sure thing. Appreciate it. I've been in media in some shape or form probably my entire career, I guess, and this is, that which starts late 90s. So I was on the media sales side of things. And for me as coming out of college, a student that wanted to be in the agency business, I remember my professor saying, there's just not enough jobs in that lane, and that was a little discouraging, but I found a company that was very similar to an agency and maybe, more like an agency even today. By the definition we think of an agency. And it was a company that represented national cable networks regionally, and we produced the TV spot itself and sold the airtime, essentially. So we were kind of like a rep firm for some of the early cable companies and operators of the time, and ultimately worked through Comcast for a while and all that. And then I got into the agency side with a full-service agency. Fast forward to 2014-15. With that, chairman of that existing agency at the time that I was with, I was VP of media at that point, gone agency side, and we formed a media agency called Conquer. So 2015 was our first year, and I still think of us as a young agency, and then sometimes I look at us and say, well, we're probably pretty mature, being 7 or 8 years in.
Well, one thing you said that I want to hit on, I thought was interesting, and I think is probably the rub a lot of business owners have with agencies or creative firms. You said that you started out in sales on the agency side. So to me, and someone who's same thing, started in sales, back in sales, I believe that helps you realize that everything you're doing for your clients still is about them selling something. It's not just about the brilliant idea, the brilliant, image, graphic, you name it. It's still about selling. I'm curious your view on that and how that's helped Conquer and yourself and your career, and again, what that might mean to business owners out there.
Sure thing. When I talk to younger people coming up into the industry and asking, what lane they should run in college and everything to get into agency work, the first thing I say is no matter what you really major in, make sure you take some business classes and make sure you take some like professional selling classes, which at the time I thought was going to be the worst experience of my life. And maybe in some ways at that age it was, but getting out in sales, being able to be in the area that I loved, which was media and making commercials and the things that I thought I would be doing, maybe more like a copywriter and creative person, I looked at the power that, media had, the fact that, people had to spend money on this and they wanted that money to work hard for them and everything else. But we had competitors. I mean, we were up against other media types and everything. And so I realized then that if I couldn't sell my ideas in and get their attention to how that could work for them against our competitors or even with them, I was going to get nowhere. You don't just get the opportunity, you have to earn it. So that selling training and everything at that time for me really helped probably more than anything else in my educational career and certainly in my career.
Well, and I think it probably still helps you to this day with clients. I mean, I think they can understand. Sometimes it's even the language you use, or how you set up. I don't know, your exact processes and approach, but trust me, I've been across the desk from many different businesses and and agencies, and some of them come in and it's all about the idea, and some of them come in about what are you trying to accomplish and what are we trying to help you sell. Whether they say it
that balance
way.
is interesting, right?
Yeah.
That balance between them. And one of the things we talk about on the show a lot is like I think it's easier to have a sales background and learn marketing than it is to have a marketing background and learn sales, right? I think the sales is a much more innate thing that's either brought out of you. I think as your career develops, it's hard to get that. Like you got to be into it, and really, it's the psychology of a deal, right? If you can read somebody and something on that micro level, it probably helps you to some extent on the macro level. And look, we're all selling something, right? If you're selling yourself, you're marketing yourself. I mean, half this show is about you market yourself. How do you get yourself out there? Sure. So I think it's really important. Talk a little bit about some of the clients that you've used those killer salesman skills to acquire and how you've worked with them to grow them.
I think in the early days, with the media company itself, when I was more like a media salesperson, I was working with larger regional car dealerships and others that are just really way edgier than I think the client base we have now, which is maybe by design. I mean, I think we appreciate every industry that's out there. Certainly, the automotive industry is one of the largest advertising categories, but for us. It's been, especially as I align my agency and think about who do I really want to work with, we've come up with a really just a high quality client base that we've retained, ever since that 2015 launch, and some of those we had, with the at the time of formation, and some we've certainly earned since then. But it's anywhere from CPG, consumer packaged goods is. Again, when I envisioned myself in advertising one day, it would be moving product off shelf. I just thought that was kind of, what it was all about. And then we've got some that are, fascinating, and that they're like some like faith-based attractions like Ark Encounter, which is a fascinating client of ours that brings people, all around the world to see a literal built representation of Noah's Ark.
Yeah,
Wow.
I've heard stories. There's a couple people in this office who've spoken about it, and they market pretty heavily. I mean, it's something that they've done a good job of getting the word out there. There's probably some PR attached with it. I mean, if I'm wrong, it's like a big wooden structure in the middle of Kentucky, right?
Right.
So that in itself should probably
the
draw
largest
some
timber
attention.
built structure, I'm pretty sure. So on the globe. But I think for us as a media agency in particular, I love to see clients that are emerging and really maybe don't even believe that they can get out on the national landscape, even if they're a nationally distributed brand, or if they're trying to reach their brand all around the globe or get their brand known all around the globe. Oftentimes I think there's this assumption that, they just can't get through that.
Sure.
That
sure.
high-level spend
It's scary
that it
as
would
can
require.
be. It's scary. I got to imagine. And market to market, town to town, region to region. I mean, we joke about it all the time. Atlanta and Portland are very different places. Like the Pacific Northwest and the Southeast are very different places. It's got to be daunting.
Yeah.
Now, I wonder, have you seen any trends because of predicted economic conditions that some of that scaling up might be on pause, that people might be, I remember the craft beer industry a couple of years ago. Everyone was trying to get their beer all over the country. And then they're like, uh-oh. And now everyone's actually closing states and trying to bring it back more to that hyper-local. Do you see any of that trend emerging? Do you see people kind of slowing their expansion plans, or do you think it's still full speed ahead?
From our viewpoint, from the client base we have, everyone's full steam ahead. I mean, we have a nice year planned out for each client. We were planning mid-year last year for this year, right? And we may the good thing you can do in today's media environment is make adjustments. Yeah. So I think that's kind of a refreshing thing for both our brands we work with and for us as an agency that. Yeah, we may lock in some permanent things. There may be some sort of, upfront type negotiations that we'll be committed to, but others we can be very flexible.
Yeah, and I think flexibility is the key. And I want to use that and also go back. So, again, the listeners out there are thinking about, hey, I am going to start talking to different agencies. You talked about you've been in different markets, all right? So you talk about automobile being edgier, and now you've, crossed that into CPG and faith-based. One of the questions we get, or I guess errors that I see sometimes is, someone gets the referral, and if they're a CPG company, but their friends that referred them are maybe all tech, and so they get this tech-only agency that's trying to come into their market, or they get, someone who is jack of all trades, master of none. How do you view that, and what would you give, as a example or recommendations to businesses that are coming your way of, do you stay specific in an industry? Is it more about the breadth of knowledge? I think it can go a lot of different ways, but to have that good working relationship with an agency.
Yeah, I think it's like Nick mentioned, there's so many out there, and that's fine. But I think as a brand manager, as a business owner, you need to think about first, like, really, what do you want that end result to be with that agency? And if it's more that you really are a blank slate when it comes to knowing marketing, and you need all the strategic advice you can get, then you're probably going to want to look at an agency that sort of leads with strategy. And then I think as you mentioned. There's other agencies that are going to be, we'll call it lower down the funnel, maybe transactional in nature, and so techy, and so sort of positionally committed to the tech in which they're getting progress. Then you may want that to be a part of that mix. But if you need strategy and sort of business strategy and marketing strategy advice, then don't just pick that kind of high sizzle,
transaction low funnel.
Agency. I think I'm glad you said that, and I think for those listening out there, before we head to the break, think about what works for you. It's not just that referral that came in. It's not just that you saw a great ad. It's think about going back to what are you trying to accomplish? Is it an overall strategy? Or maybe you've determined that, hey, we really need to focus on our PR, focus on our digital side. Then you can go after the specialty. But do that first. Do the strategic work. So when we come back from break, we'll dive in a little bit more to a lot of the wisdom that Brent has for us. And so you're listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3.
Don't miss the 10 for $10 produce sale this week at Safeway. Get select produce like large Hass avocados, mangoes, cucumbers, large lemons, green, red, or yellow bell peppers, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby peeled carrots for only $1 each. Also this week at Safeway, select meats or buy one, get one free. Get items like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef or 16-ounce containers of Jenny O 93% lean ground turkey, burger patties or Italian style or taco style ground turkey. Buy one, get one free. Visit Safeway.com for more great deals.
Now back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3 FM.
Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Nick Constantino and Trip Jobe here with Brent Barbee. One of the things we were talking about before the break is one of the things that we were talking about before the break is just having that strategy in place and the company giving the agencies the correct directives and KPIs. So when you build campaigns, you're building effective campaigns with an end result in sight. And one of the things we talk about a lot, I think one of the things that has really driven change in both the marketing space and the agency space is kind of the change in role of a CMO of a company. And, if you think back, and that CMO, even if you back to that Mad Men era, that CMO was really fully involved with the creative direction, and it seemed like they had their hands in everything, and they were meeting with the agencies.
They were the fun guy.
The guy's always with the glass of whiskey. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of changed. I think one of the reasons it's changed was the advent of the data revolution. And I think as marketing left that kind of, you have that gut feeling and you're trying to pull on those heartstrings and became more data and transactional, it aged out a lot of those CMOs, right? So, if you grew up, if you went to school and you went to marketing when that data didn't exist yet, then you're never going to be able to implement those things. So you're talking CMOs to get into that C-suite, 50s probably, mid-50s, but all of a sudden now you have these up-and-coming kids that are shooting out all this data. So, as that evolves, you lose a little bit of the strategy. So I'm wondering, as you deal with your clients, has it changed? Have you seen more of, hey, let us run the strategy for you. You don't know what you're doing. Take a step back. Or have you seen more, hey, here is the strategy. Here are our KPIs. Let's execute this. Is it a mix of it? What are you seeing out there? And where do you think the industry is going to go?
I think for us as an agency, it's the second of those. We need to, our desire is to be properly briefed and to have kind of an immersive experience with the client as much as possible. We'll call it the seat at the table. And if we have that, then, I like to come back to my team and I use the word, mediatize those business objectives, and that's really what we want to do. I mean, we don't want to go too far outside of ourselves with an idea. I mean, we're a media agency after all, but we don't want to be boxed in either so much so that we can't be a good, helpful marketing steward, on their team. And the ones that we're the most successful with and have the best fit, we have a seat at that table, and they're asking us to be a part of that planning process.
You understand what their business strategies are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's not just what the marketing or advertising and media strategies are.
Yeah.
You understand what they're trying to accomplish as a business.
We love to say, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And we can't, that means nothing if we don't know what the business objective is. It just means that we're trying to narrow in on some options. But I think that's where a lot of the kind of the up and coming things usually go, is that we feel like we need to do it. If I'm going to be a CMO that has like this, sizzle factor to my resume, then I'm going to say we need to be on TikTok. And what we normally do in those situations is, kind of a 70-20-10 approach to that, right? Like, okay, let's take 10% and go test TikTok, but let's not get so caught up in this new emerging thing that we sort of forget about that core thing that we know is tested, tried, and true.
I love the 10% rule. I used to get my brand managers when we did the budget every year, and we'd go through, and they'd have to come back with everything, and then I'd give them 10%.
Yeah.
Experiment. I don't care what it is.
But I think that 10%. That 10% needs to be the one you keep the closest eyes on. That's where you A/B test. That's where you got to show results. This is not just throw the money away. And we do it all the time. Right. I tell guys all the time, I'm like, guys, look, we'll try anything. Do you know the accountability? Are you willing to speak on behalf of the experiment in which you tried? Can you show results? Do you have a sample group? I mean, all those things are very important to it.
Absolutely. You want the metrics, but I'm like 90% I'm going to approve. 10%, if you have a crazy-ass idea, guess what? You can do it. But then I want the metrics. I want to show why. And guess what? Maybe that becomes part of the 90% next year.
It's almost like stock.
Give them the freedom.
It's almost like stock. You take those 10% on those riskiest risks, and if 10% of them work out, then you won because you're balanced yourself out. So I think that's a good rule to apply. What's the 20%?
20% is kind of an evolution of that core 70. So, I would say
slush fund a little bit, something you can kind of be a little bit more dynamic with.
So let's say linear television. It's going to have an extension of a streaming. They all have their streaming platform at this point, right? Let's make sure, and out of that 20%, let's get involved with where is it evolving, where is it going to quicker than maybe what seems more experimental. I mean.
Sure. So NBC, but also be on Peacock.
That's a natural thing for us to think. We just want our clients to think that way with us, so that that next year it certainly could be making its way into the 70, and I don't know what would get phased out, but maybe some sort of linear,
Sure.
network or something that.
And it's changing so quickly that I feel like that rule. I mean, you have to even use that rule now more than ever because things are changing so quickly. And just how quickly Netflix entered the space, and now they think they're going to be the biggest advertising OTT or video advertising space there is insane to think about it. They spent their whole life saying no, 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 and they said yes, and they're going to be that big that quickly.
Right.
I mean, that's just how fast thing changes.
Yep.
One of the things we joke around a lot is some of these big tech companies. One of the things they always swore, they were always digital advertising. They're never going to do radio, never going to do TV. Well, the second that investor money comes in, that IPO goes, what do they all do? They turn over to traditional media. Amazon is one of the biggest spenders across the board, right? And my buddies all worked at Yelp. When Yelp came, like, nah, we never need to advertise. Well, all of a sudden, that investor money came in. You get that one activist inventor. What do they say? Go to TV and radio. Go get that frequency as much as you can because it's about brand building. How about some other changes, Brent, that you're seeing, maybe in the past 2-3 years? And I almost want to take COVID out of this. I know COVID forced a lot of change, but I feel like it also sped up a lot of changes that were already in play. Do you see the continued breaking apart of agencies to more silos, or do you see people coming back together? And I know the big guys, your big agencies are gobbling up little analytics firms and predictive AI, and I know this is going to all play. But do you see that happening, or do you see more kind of individual silos continuing to pop out right and left?
I think over what I've seen over the past even decade or so, you see things that sort of get fragmented. Early days, it would have been, the numerous amounts of cable networks that are out there.
Right.
Now it would be the numerous amount of streaming platforms, but then you look at how many players are actually in the space that we would do business with to help you grow your business on those platforms, and it's very few. They sort of converged back together from an ownership standpoint, or they're merging together. But it happens over time, I think, to where, it just sort of, it gets fragmented. Your agency is helpful in that because they can kind of like get them all back together and talk to you about, how are these different, and how do we get onto each one of those platforms?
Bring the client back to who's your target audience, right?
Right.
And because you're the ones who are going to understand with all those different streaming platforms where they need to focus. I mean, clients aren't going to understand that.
Sure. Yeah. And now, we're talking, Warner Brothers Discovery for a lot of different media choices, and that changed, like you said, Nick. I mean, it seems like that changed overnight. I mean, maybe we had a year's notice, but
and the agency, as an agency, I know that Google, once you're Google certified, you get information a little bit ahead of when the market would get it,
Sure.
And I know that, we always see trends, especially here, we deal with very large companies, Truist and Invesco, massive companies, but then we deal with people spending $3,000, mom and pop. The trends you see at that high level funnel themselves down to the local level. 2-3 years almost sometimes it takes for those things to happen.
Sure.
which is what's so important of those agency relationships is you get that insider information. I know you told me you have some relationships with some of those bigger agencies, your ability to scale up. Well, that probably means you're on some trends and some they have some departments that are trying to predict future.
Sure.
I look at it a lot like the stock market, and they're so tied together. You can follow that consolidation and that spreading apart just based on how the stock market goes and interest rates. So I think you're right. I think we're in a spot where people just were spending and just expanding, and I think you're going to see it all contract. Now, what I wonder is will the established things continue to grow? And I say that like radio is a great example, TV is a great example, right? That infrastructure is unchangeable. Mostly because they're so antiquated that it's impossible to change it. But anyway, do you think that there's going to be continued spend away from digital? Maybe because of a little bit of distrust, maybe because it's just too broken right now, to some more traditional mediums?
One thing I tell my team, to begin thinking about, and I've sort of fought this since we formed in 2015, is let's of course, we need to categorize things. We need to have linear categories of things and digital categories of things. But I don't really want to talk about things as being digital versus linear.
Sure.
I want everybody to think just about distribution of how that medium, is getting heard, listened to, watched,
and the crossover is increased exponentially.
And follow it, right? So it's. I think we talked about the 20%. There's a digital extension of just about every linear media type there is.
And it's now 35% of our total consumption.
Sure.
And most radio stations probably don't even have those metrics. And do you know what Google Analytics looks like on 1 million people? You think it's probably more advanced than Nielsen's 300-person sample size? So I agree with you. That digital extension, the smart companies have really used that for more than just sales or revenue, for data also.
And even, newspaper, they made the adjustment when they had to. I mean, I remember thinking, well, it's just going to evaporate. This is crazy. But, it just, those that survived successfully went digital.
Right.
But there's still,
and there's an audience, depending on who your client is.
Right.
That's still a way, not the only way, but a way to reach them.
Sure.
And that's that holistic, whether it's linear, whether it's digital, that you bring that expertise back to your clients on.
Yeah. And I do think the legacy brands, are going to be the most successful in that. There's going to be some smaller things that were exclusively linear that maybe make it in the digital space. But, NBC has no problem convincing their consumer that, they're going to push content onto Peacock now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is how you get it. Even, you buy, even if you're in the older demographic, if you buy any new TV these days, it's going to be a connected television, most likely. It's going to be
the
a
UI
smart
has gotten
device.
so much easier to use. I mean, that was one of the
Right.
problems back in the day. The user interface was so bad you couldn't figure it out. It was freezing out on you.
Right.
Now that it's convenient to use, the way I know is if my mother can use it, then anybody can use it because
That's
she didn't
right.
get a cell phone until it was still like an old Nokia brick phone up until about like a year ago. So if she can use it, anybody can use it.
Yeah, and I think, and maybe we can just throw out a couple of different ideas because, we can always have the exception for everything. But when you're talking about, linear and old school, one of the ones that comes, to mind for me, and granted, I'm an old print guy, but, it's magazines and right kind of where you are. I mean, I think one of the great success stories of the last 5 to 8 years is Garden and Gun magazine. And I mean, I've watched it since, when I was there and Bellegarde we started advertising there. And I mean, Garden and Gun now is one of the places to be for lifestyle brands. And I would bet, I don't know the exact, but it's got to be 40% ads but some great content. But
Sure.
that's old school.
Yep.
Granted, with experiential events, digital that supplement it.
Right.
But there are people that's must read that go there.
Sure. Well, and I think where that fits for me is sort of the medium is oftentimes the message. I mean, if you're in Garden and Gun, that means something to that reader.
Yeah.
There's this persuasive kind of nuance to that we're trying to be persuasive after all. We're trying to, bring out those value attributes of that brand that make you want to buy it. So oftentimes it's just where is that message actually sitting with that audience, because they trust Garden and Gun, they trust Fox or CNN. There's things that people are really, really committed to in their media life.
Yeah.
And so we always try to think about, that higher impact placement, and we want the frequency, we want, all the impressions we can gain. And especially if we're doing lead gen and those types of things, we need, sort of a flywheel effect. But at the same time, we do want to build that brand and be true to that brand and putting it in a proper space that it'd be proud to be in.
A great point, and it ties together what you said previously, right? It's not about linear versus digital, it's lifestyle. Garden and Gun represents lifestyle. And when you can reach somebody on that lifestyle level, that's when the marketing is going to really work. Because you're not marketing, you're talking to them. And that's something, I think that, as sports radio, the Braves, that's something we do well. Like that Braves fan is that Braves fan. If you can talk to Braves country and as in the voice of Braves country, that leads to success, which is why people invest so much in sports.
Right.
One of the things, let's go forward a little to some macro conditions. One of the things when you and I spoke last was a little bit more about data, analytics, attribution. Talk a little bit about marketing science. Talk a little bit about those systems and kind of what goes into some of the predictive analytics, some of those new buzzwords people are talking about, and how you see marketing evolving and continue to evolve within that space.
Sure. We introduced the marketing science vertical at the agency a few years back, and yes, it was for clients, but honestly, I think it was for me more than anything. Initially, because I'm like, hey, if we can build something that gives us better attribution, but also can help us predict what the better tactics would be in more of a quantitative way, then let's do it. So that's really why we built it and established it at our agency, and where that's grown has been anything from looking at the effect linear has on digital activity. I mean,
Sure.
I mean, this is a common topic, more or less, in the sense that you've got to be on digital, and yes, linear could be valuable, but how valuable?
Yeah.
And
you're looking at lift and you're looking at attribution. You're tracking web visits within a certain duration of something running, eyeballs on something.
Right.
And you can even, as far as on our system, you can track the channels they're coming in through. We have the ability to actually track keywords, and if they came into a certain keyword. So that's what you're talking about. It's just tying, because maybe they didn't buy because they saw it on TV, but maybe they went to the website the first time because they saw it on TV. Well, who's getting credit for that click?
Yeah, and inside the boardroom, if you will, trying to make decisions on where to go with media and budget for linear for the next year. If we could show that, your digital was 13% more effective when you had linear in play, then that's a better mix, right?
Sure.
It may not make, mainstream sense to brag about your linear addition to your digital plan, but it certainly makes business sense when we can show that that's the effect that it had on your digital activity.
And you can probably track that if you saw two together, you're 2 times more likely to actually buy because you're tracking through the end of the purchase cycle, right? So maybe it lifted 30%, but maybe your conversion rate is 2 times higher. Well, then that's really a much higher success rate. And what, just for some scale, what percent of companies do you think have the capabilities to track what we're talking about? Because, we deal with a lot of kind of businesses, and most of the times when I get to the corporation, even if it's the highest up marketing person, they don't know what I'm talking about. They don't have access to that information. And then you get to the low level people, and they're like, I don't know what a Google Analytic is, let alone GA4 versus. So what percentages of businesses you deal with have the metrics set up to really track funnel all the way through which marketing medium is putting impact, and what impact do you have on following those processes?
I don't know about percentages. I think just from our experience with very sophisticated clients, there's always some sort of rub in that space. Like, we need to help them establish an ecosystem that is going to give us all better readout, better visualization of what is happening, in fact. And I think those that commit more to it, if you will, they're probably sales driven, or they're maybe lead gen driven with their advertising. They're not, hey, you guys just go out and, get our brand awareness up. I mean, there's a very quantifiable metric, and we've done a lot of we've done a lot of lead gen to where we're even trying to stay within sort of a acquisition cost, right? So this is when you have to get your data science together with your business people, and then with your marketing people, and build that funnel.
So I'm curious too, and it's probably still a small percentage, but it sounds like it's growing, which is great. How many of them then go beyond the lead generation into, I like to look at opportunity generation, because to me that starts to tell you if both the marketing's effective and your sales team's effective. And because we all know we can create leads a lot of ways, but if you create opportunities, then you've probably really started hitting it. And unfortunately, I still see a lot of marketing departments that that's not our responsibility, to pass it off. They're not connected with sales.
Sure. We've met a lot of omni-channel managers we'll say over the past 2 years in the CPG space in particular, and I think their job, whether they know it or not, is to kind of look at every one of those touches and what effect does it have on that, we'll call it purchase decision, but maybe just brand affinity in general, or introduction of the brand. There are certain things that need to happen to get somebody to a decision, and I think our marketing space with the addition of digital has helped create that new role, if you will, of the omni-channel person. Good. And if it were standard in textbook, you just hire an omni-channel person and they do a great job, right? But there is a lot of science involved in that, but there's just a lot of good, and every marketing prowess.
Every company's omni-channel is different, right? How many channels are they? Is there one overseeing all of them, or are there 3 different ones that report to an omni-channel? It's everyone's hierarchy is going to be different. One of the questions I have is about predictive analytics. So, look, it's a huge topic right now, and I think what you're talking about is, again, if you can spot future trends and use previous data to do so. One of the problems I see is if you don't have the right inputs, you'll never get the right outputs, right? We talk about CRM all the time. If your CRM system is set up the right way to where you can predict things, great. But most of the times, the inputs are not set up correctly, so your outputs are going to be wrong. So what do you see that space going? Is your marketing science division built to do some of those predictive things? And how are you using that tech? Because it is certainly a buzzword right now.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing I appreciate about our data scientists is they're not marketers. And, I mentioned to you before, I started in sales, so I get excited about an idea. I want to really push that along and see things happen. And I think the addition of a more scientifically minded person on our team helps us be as honest as possible with what do we think the promise should be. Not what is the aspirational goal, what do we think we could do if we work our tails off, but what does the science show us? And the other thing about data, folks, is they love data, and digital media gives you a tremendous amount of streams, right?
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that our folks are doing it correctly, but ultimately we want to be measuring the correct things. We talk a lot about measure what matters and kick out what doesn't. Let's even push back with the client if we need to say, let's start here with these 3 things. We think these are more predictable than others, and let's go ahead and create a visualization that we can all kind of gather around and talk about, and then let's make some decisions for next year or next week or whatever it is to optimize.
No, I think getting priorities and making sure they truly are KPIs and they're not just metrics.
Right.
Right. They're really valuable to understanding the business.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of the things you said, and kind of going back to if you are interviewing an agency, a great question is, what is the agency doing to invest to get better? You just talked about putting together the marketing science, but a lot of agencies are not investing in their business for their clients, and I think that's a great way to look at it. The next couple of years, how do you continue to see that? Where are you going to want to invest either in your people or your processes and for the next few years?
Sure. Yeah, I mean that is the sort of debate in my mind many days, is what should we purchase and invest, put on our roof, and what is an enterprising solution that already exists, and be okay with either. We've got to resist the temptation to say that we've got it all figured out. We have it all at the agency. We're going to buy everything that is new and exciting or claim to have, versus just looking to the companies that have fully invested in that. Data is a good example, and partnering with them to create what's right for us. And that may be Salesforce products or other things that are out there that you can integrate into your agency. But the most important thing is the person that's standing over that and operating it for the day and leading it. And you've got to get that's where our talent, is beginning to, our talent pool that we're looking at no longer is about artists and great, pitchmen or whatever. It's how do we get the smartest people in the right seats, and then the other technical stuff will take care of itself.
Yeah, you want a balanced team. Right. It's not just it's not back when we said the fun guys and just the creative guys. You want to bring the resources that your clients need, and I think that's incredibly important. So it's good to hear that. We've been talking here with Brent Barbee of the Conquer Agency. When we come back from break, we'll maybe do some rapid fire to get into thoughts around what's happening ahead in the marketing world out there. So you're listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. We'll be right back.
Don't miss the 10 for $10 produce sale this week at Safeway. Get select produce like large Hass avocados, mangoes, cucumbers, large lemons, green, red, or yellow bell peppers, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby peeled carrots for only $1 each. Also this week at Safeway, select meats or buy one, get one free. Get items like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef or 16-ounce containers of Jenny O 93% lean ground turkey, burger patties or Italian style or taco style ground turkey. Buy one, get one free. Visit Safeway.com for more great deals.
Now back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3 FM.
Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job and Nick Constantino here with Brent Barbee from the Conquer Agency. And, in this last segment, obviously we're, early in the year. There's a lot of volatility going on right now. I mean, depending on what you hear, you turn it on and it's, the world's going to, shut down or things are going great, depending on what industry you're in.
Yeah, this is those example of predictive analytics never being right. Because everyone's got a prediction. And
everyone's got one, and they're all diverging.
Their prediction, and then all of a sudden, the one guy who gets it right dances for 5 years, and then that Big Short guy's got a new prediction every time, and he's wrong with every one of them. Yeah. So you keep resting on those laurels, man.
Yeah, I know. It's just kind of like Stephen A. Smith. It's you just love it when he's wrong.
All you got to hit is one. All you got to hit is one. It's like the lottery, man. You just got to hit it once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I think probably the most common right now is, a little bit of concern. Hey, we're, maybe we are going into recession. What's top of mind? What would you tell clients in that regard?
Well, I think the gamble part of me says that's a great time to win market share away from the bigger kind of gorilla that you're up against, whatever your competitive space is. That could be hard to do, but a great example of a creative agency or just an agency that has creative ideas, get with them and challenge them to come up with something maybe a little more efficient on the spend side. But, general marketing principles don't change, when the economy changes. And, there are numerous stories of brands that actually get ahead because they take advantage of the media market and the fact that their competitors are pulling out.
Yeah, and there's some companies that exist to wean out their competitors, right? In an economic downturn, doors are going to close, and usually the ones with the strongest brands are the ones that exist the longest, and they're not always the best companies. They're just the ones that marketed the most and got their name out there the most. So, one of the things we talk about, Brent, and I'm curious your opinion on this, is, you're going to get to a point where, especially this is relevant to the home improvement industry, right? Man, the demand was so high during COVID. Everyone wanted to redo their house. Just the searches, I have to imagine the ability to capitalize on low funnel activities, because everyone was searching for, need a deck, like, oh my God, can't go on vacation, need to update my house, I'm going to kill my wife, fix this bedroom. Like, we're so high. But what happens when that fizzles out? And what we've trying to instruct in people is, look, this might be time to reinvest in your brand, right? Maybe in your community, maybe in the brand, because if the demand's not there, then you're spending more money to capitalize on the demand that's already created as opposed to creating your own demand. So is that sound advice? Are we completely full of it? Because sometimes we are. Are you giving that advice? And obviously a different space by space. You're talking Farmrich is a brand that's been established forever. You're not going to, it's going to take years before you can affect their brand presence or popularity. But for local clients, is that sound advice? Is that something you would go along with?
Yeah, I think, what the pandemic period did teach us, when things hit the fan, is it does actually, if you can think clearly, it gives you time to think. If you can grab a little bit of resource, it gives you time to handle some of the things that you hadn't, quote, had time to do when you were so busy. I think that's great advice. If there was really some issues with the brand and everybody knew it, but we just couldn't stop, we just couldn't, we were changing the tires while the car was still running, right? I think that's sound advice. And I think, also think about what you want to do when it gets better, because everything takes time to plan, and if it's a media campaign, like, hey, when this clears up, we want to hit the ground running. We're going to be ready, not, oh, look, it cleared up. Right. Now we've got to do 6 months worth of, brand and message and media development.
Yeah, and I think you got to be more dynamic there, right? Because, yes, you're coming out of this, but what if you're wrong by the date? Then all of a sudden the seasonality changes. You might be in a completely different season, selling a different good. You might enter the holiday season. You might enter, the difference between December 10th and January 10th is boom cycle versus get everything out of my warehouse. So I think I agree with that completely, but you still have to have that little bit of flexibility, because, what if you are off? What if this goes longer? You can't come out of something that you don't have a complete end date on. Yeah.
What's the worst thing that, advice you've seen, or the worst thing for a company to do?
We've had, sort of dramatic pauses in activity, and I think that's where you're going to lose all the momentum that you built. And I get it. Like, look, if you got to make a number or you really need to make some business moves to save cash, then, pause your marketing, pause other things, pause whatever you can to conserve the cash. But I think that's usually the knee-jerk reaction is probably the worst thing I see brands do and agencies do alike. An agency's supposed to be your problem solver. So keep them involved in the conversation. They're going to need to make revenue during that downtime as well. Pose the problem and see if they can help you solve it. And it doesn't always mean let's pause everything. So
yeah, and is there, the old soft landing? Is there a way that you can come in and not pause, but maybe cut back, but still do key things that, with enough frequency? I think the thing that my worst, example over the years would be, okay, we're not going to stop, but we're going to do one thing. We're going to do it so infrequently that basically I'm throwing money away. It's either do it enough with enough frequency that you're still out there,
Sure.
or if you have to pause for 45 days, pause for 45 days, then get going again.
Yeah, that's that point you said. Those principles don't change, right? It is a reach and frequency medium, and if you are more looking for a more specific audience, you need more frequency. If you're looking broad, you need more reach. Those principles will not change. The only thing that could change is if you decide to stop doing them altogether. And then, one of the things I've noticed, one of the real problems that you have is that if you stop marketing, if you're a good marketer, you won't see those impacts for 6 months because your brand presence exists. So you will not see it for 6 months. By the time you stop for 6 months, it's going to take you a year to get restarted. So you may think you saved yourself 6 months of advertising, but it's going to take you double that to get back going to where you were. I mean, I explain it. I think I'm clear with how I say it, but I get looks of craziness when I say those words, and I have not found them to be untrue at any time.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
So we'll see.
No, and I think what sometimes happens, especially if, some of your clients are corporate, is, if you get in that and you do take, 4, 5, 6 months off, and then it doesn't change everything, and then I would get it from the CFO. Well, so we cut back on our marketing, and it didn't really affect our business. I mean, it didn't affect it this year, but just wait. But unfortunately, people will look at the numbers. So, your point, it's sometimes, maybe you do need to take a pause. That's why I threw out 45 days, because I think you start getting more than that, and it's out of sight, out of mind. But I'd rather take a brief 45-day pause and then go right back. Okay, guess what? I just saved you 15% of our total year. If you were thinking, 52 weeks, I took 6 weeks out. But that's about it.
And that's where strategy comes in, dude. Because look, one of the things we always talk about, everyone's like, oh, I want to be on as much as possible. Well, do you? Well, maybe not. Maybe you want to be on. There is something value of being on just one day a week. With a radio medium, TV medium, like if you're on, then the same people who watch on Fridays always see on Fridays. So you're able to almost fake frequency to an extent. Yep. So I think that's where the strategy comes into play. And I think that if you're a company, it is very hard for you to understand that marketing strategy because you're looking inward and you're distracted by your own things. And I think it's hard for marketers too, because obviously we think we know better than everybody. So sometimes we ignore a client's KPIs and needs because we think we know better. So I think, as we talk about it, lean on your partners, your agencies, your media partners, lean on them hard.
And
absolutely.
Tripp, when you say one thing, when you're mentioning, there's certain things that you may find you can do without. I mean, that's okay too. Like, agency, your marketing team, everybody should be okay with actually being able to get rid of, previously a sacred cow of things. And like we represent RSM Classic, a PGA golf tournament down our way in St. Simons, and what the pandemic taught them is how to be more efficient, and what they could sort of live without and what they couldn't live without. So certain amenities, if you will, or even hospitality features have been sort of, modified, and it's just been really cool to see their team go through that, without freaking out. They just, mapped it out.
And that's exactly, and I think that's why you've got someone looking at your overall strategy for you. So it's been a great discussion about the benefits and value of an agency with Brent Barbee of the Conquer Agency. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
Also, shout out to Matt Torrey, who's in the room, who made the introduction to begin with. What's up, Matt?
Yeah,
over there next to the Georgia Bulldog.
Yeah,
good job, Matt.
Been a great show, and we will talk to you next week. This has been the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3.
Don't miss the 10 for $10 produce sale this week at Safeway. Get select produce like large Hass avocados, mangoes, cucumbers, large lemons, green, red, or yellow bell peppers, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby peeled carrots for only $1 each. Also this week at Safeway, select meats or buy one, get one free. Get items like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef or 16-ounce containers of Jenny O 93% lean ground turkey, burger patties or Italian style or taco style ground turkey. Buy one, get one free. Visit Safeway.com for more great deals.
Tonight in Arkansas, there's a mother tucking in her daughter and turning off the light. A business owner is burning the midnight oil. An at-home dinner date is plating up possibility. And it's all happening under one roof. How? The power of a conversation, like the one John from Integrity Solutions had with First Horizon Bank about his vision for a sustainable mixed-use building. Now it's not just words, it's life. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/John. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.